So everybody, we're going to wait a couple of more minutes for people to join. If you can see in the chat, if you haven't done that already, you need to download DB browser, which is the tool we're going to use for today and also for tomorrow's session. And if you haven't done that, please do, and just answer yes to all the questions. I mean, don't change anything, just say okay, and you can download it that way. My name is Helena Bengtsson. I'm sorry for scaring people thinking that I would be late. I have driven through rain and storm to be with you today, and I'm coming to you from Sweden, where I work at a publishing group of local newspapers in the south of Sweden. Before that, I have worked with the National Broadcasting Company in Sweden, and also at the Guardian in London, and in Washington with the Center for Public Integrity for many years. So what we are going to do is to look at SQL, or how to take the next step after Excel. I'm sort of assuming that everybody knows a little bit about Excel. It will be hard to follow otherwise. You can, of course, try, but you need to have a little bit knowledge about what a row is, what a column is, in order to follow this. For me, SQL is sort of the next step. And if you ask why you should take this step, because I actually think that Excel is a splendid tool, which I use a lot. I still spend about 80% of my time working in Excel. But I will say that there are really 3 reasons for taking this step into using a relational database that speaks the language of SQL. And that is, if you have very large files. I mean, Excel can, in theory, take about 1 million rows. If you're working, for instance, on a Mac with Excel, it can take a lot less. And it gets really, really hard to work with any kind of formulas, any kind of that, if you go with very large Excel files. So if you have a large file, that's one reason. If you want to share your data with other people, that's another reason to go to a database, because databases are actually made for working together, that several people work together on the same data. And the third reason, and the most fun reason, is that it gets much, much easier to connect files. And that's what we're going to spend most of tomorrow doing, is connecting files and sort of cross-referencing files and matching data. And that's when you can match data like these are people who have received funds from the government, and these are people who have also ended up, I don't know, I'm making this up, receiving. We have farmers, for instance, who get funds from the government. If we look at them, we can also look at them and see how many of them haven't paid their taxes, for instance. Well, if you get money from the government, maybe you should pay your taxes, or things like that. So you can sort of cross-reference data. But I'm going to talk a little bit about SQL. And if you're familiar with Excel, you know that Excel is very forgiving when it comes to if you put something in one column, if you put something in a cell, and that could be a text, if you under that put a number or a date, Excel will automatically recognize that it's a text, it's a number, it's a date, and you can put all of those in the same column. When we come to databases, and databases who uses SQL, you have to keep your data formats, we call them, the different kinds of data separate. So if you decide that a column should be only numbers, you can't put any text in there. The database will actually throw an error if you try to put text in a column or a variable, which we call them sometimes, where you've decided that there should only be numbers. The same way that if you put numbers in a column where you decided there should only be text, those numbers will be there, but they will be regarded as letters in a way, which means that the number 99 will go before the number 10,000 if you sort them, because the letter 9, 10,000 will be before 99 if you sort them, because the letter 1 comes before in the alphabet compared to the letter 9, if you understand what I mean. So it will treat the numbers like letters. You won't be able to count with them. It won't sort correctly. So you have to separate your text from your numbers, from your dates. And that's what we call a data type. So we're gonna start by building a small database, and I hope that everybody has downloaded the program and can follow along. Otherwise, you're happy to just sort of follow along and look at what I'm doing. We're gonna start by starting the program by I'm gonna write DB SQL DB browser, which I'm very sorry to say I'm on the wrong computer. So you will see the download in live here. There we go. I haven't shared my screen, have I? No, there we go. Here we go. So I will now download the data. And you will see how quick it is. So if you haven't downloaded it, you will be able to see me install it right now. And I accept the terms. I click next. Next. And I click install, and it will hopefully install very quickly. And I'm sorry about that. And I'm going to allow that to do that. And finish. And that's the installation. So it takes very short time, luckily. And I can now go into, and this is different from Excel in the way that, you know how when you start Excel, you just get an empty spreadsheet right away. Where here, because we need to, we can put several tables in at the same database because we can connect them. We have to first create and I almost think about it as a bucket. We first create the bucket where we then can put all our tables in. So let's start a database. And I'm sorry that the screen is so small. In one way, it's great that we're doing this digitally because it's easier for you to see on your screens than it is when you have a big, when you're looking around. It is very small, but up in the far left, in the top left corner, you will have new database. So click on new database to create a database, and then just decide to put that somewhere. I'm going to put mine on the desktop, and I'm going to call this database GIJC is the database name. You can call the database whatever you want. I'm going to call it GIJC, and just click save in your language. This says save in Swedish, so I'm going to just click save. And as I have created a database, it asks me to start creating a table. And for the fun of it, I thought that we should just create a table and add a few lines to a table before we start working with data. So I'm gonna make a table called people. And when I write, if you looked at the screen now, you see when I write the word people in the white box just below table, you see that the text down here changes. So all of a sudden it says create table people instead of just create table. So once I've done that, I've named my table. So now I can add my columns, or as we call them in databases, fields. So by clicking add, I can add a field called name. And next to name, you see exactly what I was talking about in the beginning. It asks what type is name. And it suggests integer, but integer means a number that doesn't have any decimal points. So I'm just gonna pop down that drop down, and I'm gonna say that name is text. And here you can see it could be an integer, which means a number without any decimal points. It could be a text. It could be a very large text. Then it's called a blob. We're not going to do that. And then it could be real. Numeric is a little tricky, so don't use that. Use real instead. Real is a decimal point number. But we're going to use text here. And as you can see, we're now creating our table, and the command is written down below. So once we've changed it to text, we can click on add. And I'm going to just say H. And I'm going to say that that is an integer. An H can be a whole number. So I'm just going to click here on integer so that it takes it, sort of. So I click on integer. I don't have to drop down the box. I just have to click in it. And then I can click on add again. So we're going to add a couple of more fields. I'm going to add company. And that is a text. And I'm going to add how many years at work. And I'm going to write that at work, just like that, into one word. So years at work. You don't use spaces in names of columns. You can do it, but it gets really tricky to do it. So I would not recommend you to do it. Instead, using either, you can do it two ways. You either write the words all together, or you can use underscore in between words if you want it to be more legible. So years at work, and we're going to make that, just for the fun of it, we're going to make that a real number. So that could be, I could be 2.5 years at work, for instance. So this is our 4 components. This is our 4 variables. This is our 4 fields or 4 columns in our database. And you can see that the program has created the command to creating the table. So you can also learn a little bit of SQL by just looking at that. And you can just click OK, and the table will be created. Oh. You see, I hope that Jean-Sebastian had gotten it to work. It's the desktop. It was Constantina who said that you should click desktop, and that would probably work. I hope that things are working out for you, Jean-Sebastian. So we have a table here, and we can now start filling it. And the easy way to fill this table is to click on this tab that says in the middle here, that says execute SQL. If you look in the top, it says new database. Under there, it says database structure. That's where we are. And you can now go to execute SQL and we're gonna write some commands. And I'm gonna start up a Word document to show you what I'm writing, so that you can see what I'm writing in a bigger font. So I'm basically gonna say insert into people. That's the table. And this is the usual way you write things, is that your commands is in capital letters, and then your variables, your fields, or your tables is in lowercase. So we're gonna, into people, we're gonna add some values. And those values are I'm going to add myself, and I'll put commas in between. So my name is Helena. I'm 55 years old. I work at GOTA, and I worked there for 2 months. So that means that I worked there for, I'm going to say 0.2 years, because I want to do this in years anyway. So this is my command, insert into people values. And as you can see, Word unfortunately makes those slanted quotation marks. You should use the straight ones, but if you use quotation marks in the program, it will work just fine. So I'm going to write my command here. I'm going to say insert into people. And you could see that when I spelled that wrong, it actually became purple because it said, I don't recognize this. And when I spelled it right, it became green. So you get a little bit of an idea when you write it in whether or not you're on the right track. And I'm going to say values. And once I've said values, I'm going to say a parenthesis, and then I'm going to put my name in. And my name needs to be, because it's a text, it needs to be in quotation marks. It could be single or double actually, but I'm using single here. And then a comma, and then my age, which is 55, and my company, which is GOTA, and then a comma again, and then how long have I worked there? 0.2 years, because it's just, I've just been working there for 3 months. So this is my command. In order to run it, I can press the execute button, and that is like a play button, like an old play button from a VCR or something like that. You just press play, and in the bottom here it says execution finished without errors, and it repeats my command basically the same way. So now we have one row in our database, and we can fill them with a couple of other rows. And I'm just going to make some people's names up here so that we can fill them in. So for instance, I go back to my, and you don't have to, I just can change then. So I can change in my data. Let's put a person named Peter in here. Let's say that he's 25. He works with, let's make something up. Let's say that he works at The Guardian. That's a place I know, and he's been working there for 10 years. So let's fill this person in. His name is Peter. He's 25, I think I said. He works at The Guardian. And he's worked there for 10 years. So once I've filled this in, I can press the play button again, and make sure that you don't press it twice, because if you do that, you will get 2 rows in your database. So I'm going to press play, and we have now 2 names. So let's put like 1 or 2 people in, just so that we have some data to work with. So I'm just making people up. If there's a Peter out there who's 25 and works at The Guardian, please know that I didn't know that you were here and that I'm making you up. So we're going to do a Sally, and Sally is 62, and she works, let's make a publication, let's make it up. Let's say that she works at the New York Times. And she's worked there for 42 years. Just making people up. So I'm going to put her in here. I'm going to say Sally. She's, what did I say? 62, I think. Yeah, 62. She's 62 She works at New York Times. And did you see there when I lost that quotation mark, how the whole row turned red? Because it shows me that I'm losing something. So pay attention to your colors, because the colors will tell you whether or not you've typed it in right or not. So, and she's worked there for 42 years, right? I think I said. So let's play that. And just for the fun of it, we're going to put in a colleague of mine. So we're going to do Victoria. She is 50 years old. She also works at GOTA, G-O-T-A. Let's delete that. And she's worked there for a really long time. She's worked there for 30 years. So I'm putting her into the database. I'm doing Victoria. She is 50 years old. She works at GOTA. And she's worked there for 30 years. And I press play. So I've pressed play after each person. And what we can do now is that we can go back and we can look at browse data if we want to. So if you click on browse data, the tab up here next to database structure, you will see browse data. You can see that here's our database. It has 4 names, their ages, their companies, and how many years they worked at the company. So what we can do now is we can start playing with the data a little bit. And what I love about SQL is that it's almost like you're asking questions in a way that you don't ask questions in Excel, for instance. So let's go back to this, execute SQL, and we can just learn the command that I always run, which is the first command I always run in all databases. And that is this. It looks like this. I say select star from people. And star in this context means everything. So select everything from people, which means show me the table people. And that is a command I always say. It's also very good because one thing is that DB browser, just as Excel, doesn't keep track on what you do with the database. So I usually actually, this is not just for your benefit, but whenever I work on a database, I actually use this, a Word document or a notes document of some kind, and I enter all my commands in there, or at least all the important commands, so that I can go back and redo them if I need to, and I can keep track on them, what I do. And sometimes if they're complicated, I will also write some descriptions of what I intended to do and what I wanted the command to do. So let's try out this. Let's delete the one we did, and let's say select star from people. There isn't an SQL log that at least not in this program, it might be in other programs. Adele asked if isn't there an SQL log that tracks it for you. I think it's better to do it in the data diary because you can also add comments and results and explanations on what you're doing. So it sort of becomes like a data diary, and the log doesn't really do that. So for me, I've always done it like that. And I don't think that the program logs it. I hope not in that case. I haven't found that function out yet. But for me, it's always been better to do it in a data diary. There we go. So we're now gonna run the program. Bottom left options, bottom right options. Oh, here. SQL log. Oh, look at that. You always learn something. But does this do what I want to do? I would say that there is some kind of log. There is some kind of log. Let's see. Select shows SQL selected by user. Look at that. You're right. Thank you. Adiel, thank you. It does that, but it doesn't really give you the way where you can do it as a description. Sorry, where you can do it as a description. But if you look here, you can click on SQL log there. Thank you for teaching me something. SQL log, and then you change the word to user, and it will give you this. I would probably still do it in SQL in a data diary, but if you've forgotten to log something in your data diary, you can always find it here, and that is good for me to know. Thank you. It's great that you are commenting like that. It's a little strange to be sending this out without seeing your screens and not seeing whether or not you're following along. Select star from people. I press play, and I get the exact same result as we got when we said browse data. It gives us the whole database like that. But by using this select command, we can also, of course, because now we've selected everything. One of the great things, and one of the things that I didn't talk to you about, why would I transfer from Excel to SQL? And one of the reasons that I also sometimes forget about is that I don't know if a lot of you have worked on Excel files that are large in that way, when they have a lot of columns and you move back and forth in this Excel file and you try to sort of find all the columns. Sometimes what I did in the old days was that I deleted some columns and I worked on other columns, and then I realized I actually needed those columns and I had to put them back in, and it became a mess. Great thing about SQL is that you can select, in the select statement, you can select which columns to work on. So I can, for instance, I can say here instead, I can say select name, comma, age from people. And I will only get those two columns. So if I change my command here, instead of star, I say name, comma, age, and you can put a space in or you cannot put a space in. It doesn't matter. I sometimes like to put a space in because it's easier to read, but the important thing here is the comma. The space doesn't really matter, but you need to have the comma between the name and the age. And you do select name, comma, age from people, and I run it. And you see that I only see these two columns. So my selection is, so I can sort of pick and choose columns, but the data will stay in the background complete, but I can choose to work on different columns. And I really like that. And what if I want to, so now we've selected columns. What if I want to sort this? Well, of course, I can sort in SQL as well. So I can do, let's do select name, comma, company, for instance. So then we always need to do the from. We need to do the from people. And let's do order by company. So as you can see, it's almost English. For me, who is a non-English speaker, this is it's not my native tongue. This is definitely English. Select name company from people, order by company. It's a little rugged, but it's still English. So I can then just change my query just once again. I say select name, comma, company from people. And then I do order by company. And if I run the query, I see that it now comes in a different order. Remember when we entered the data, I entered my name first and Victoria's name last. And now it's ordered in alphabetically on company. And when the queries start to get a little longer, what you usually do is that you divide them up into several rows. So say that we instead want to select name, comma, age. And why don't you finish this by yourselves? So try to do a query where you sort it by age instead. So just try, you're getting a few seconds to try this out yourselves. And what we usually do, and this is all this, you can do your commands in lowercase letters if you want. This is just what's called standard, where you write it. Oh, thank you. That's great. At least one person. It worked for one person. Hooray. And a great question from Anastasia. How do we sort it in descending order? I was just going to get to that, because what we want to do here, I thought, was to select name and age from people. And we want to order by age. And in order to sort it by descending, we just write DESC after the thing that we're sorting on. Exactly. Oh, George, good job, George. I'm so glad that you communicate with me. Thanks for doing that. So this is how we do it. There will be what is already that the question from Savia is there a list of commands in SQL depending on our needs? I have posted, or Emily from GIJN has posted a step-by-step tip sheet for today or tomorrow in files that you can download. And then what I do is usually I Google. So in those tip sheets, you will get the most common SQL commands that you will use for different things. And once you get a little more fluent, it will be in Pathable under files. I don't know if Peter could help. Yeah, great. Thank you, Emily. Great. And Emily has just posted where you can find the tip sheet. Once you've sort of get a little bit more fluent in SQL, you've done these exercises, I usually use Google, because there's tons and tons of resources out there that can give you the different commands for different types of things. Okay, it's not there yet, says Emily, but it will be up soon. Yeah, and that is my fault because I was late. I will just say. That is great. So this is the command. We still haven't gotten to run it, so we haven't seen if it works. So I'm gonna rewrite it. Select name, comma, age. Did I say name, comma, age? Yes, I did. And then I'll do a new row, because that makes it easier to read from people. And I say order by age, and I put the words descending, DESC, so that we see that we have Sally, me, Victoria, and Peter, one after another. So we've ordered them that way. One more thing before we sort of go on to use data that might feel a little bit more useful. And that is, we have sort of selected variables, selected columns this way. But what if we only want to select certain rows? If we only, for instance, want the rows where people are named Peter. So of course we can write the same thing here. I'll just scroll up a little bit. It always starts with, this is sort of, you're starting, I hope, to see the pattern here. So let's say name, comma, company this time, from people. It always starts like that. And now I'm going to introduce a new word. And I'll say where name equals, and then I have to put that into quotation marks, Peter. So this is how I select this. And if we go here and we write it out, select name, comma, company, from people. Then we'll have the new command, which is where. And I'll say where name equals quotation mark. And one thing that is very tricky with databases in general is that you have to pay much more closer attention to detail here. So if you've named Peter with a capital P and ETER in lowercase, then that's what you have to write. There are ways to get through that and get around that. But if you remember from Excel, Excel doesn't really care if you use lower or upper cases. In databases, that is really important. So you have to pay attention to that. And there are ways around that, as I said, but we're not going to go into that now. We're coming to that later. So select name, comma, company from people where name equals Peter. And you can put, and we put name A to Z. I think that you can use, yes, we'll get to that. Konstantina, we'll get to that in a little second. So thanks for a great question. We'll get to that very soon. Let's run this first. So let's see. And then we get, when we run this, we get only the person whose name is Peter. So Konstantina asked, what if we're not really sure? Well, what we can do is that we can, for instance, let's say that we know that we want to have, we know that the company name starts with a GO, but we don't know the whole thing. So you can then use, and usually you're very used to using stars in this context, where you search in databases. You search for VO star, and then you get Volvo and Vauxhall. No, you don't get Vauxhall because it's not spelled with no. But anyway, you understand what I mean. So in this case, when Konstantina asks us, instead of doing, so we'll do the same thing. We'll do select name, comma, company, from people where, and instead we want to do company, and we want to do a fuzzy search here. We don't know the exact name. Well, then SQL is a little bit particular, so you can't use equal sign anymore. You have to write out the word like, and then I can use, so let's say that I know that it starts with the GO, and then I use a % sign. And that I can use either like this, because I know that it starts with a GO, or I can use it both sides. And then it can also be the GOTA, and it would work, for instance. So I can use % signs either one or both ways, like this. just as you would use stars in another search. So if I use this, and we can see, I'm just going to actually change the last line here. Why are you making me work? Okay. For some strange reason, it's not letting me delete this. It's very strange. It seemed like it was still running. I don't know why it was doing that. Okay, well, let's do that again. Select name, comma, company from people. And we'll do our where, and then we'll do company like quotation mark GO %, quotation mark. So I want everything that starts with a GO. And let's run that. And we see that we get the 2 rows where people work at the same company. But if it had been a company called something else starting with a GO, it would also do that. And if we change this, for instance, just for the fun of it, so we'll say we want any company that has a capital G in the name. We'll do, and I'll just change this very quickly, delete %. So I want any company that has a capital G somewhere in the name. That's what this means. I'll then also throw in the Guardian, because the Guardian also has a capital G there at the end. So this is how you do that. You can select names and companies. And here, of course, I can combine this. So I can say, I can also say here, I can say order by name, for instance. So I can change this by saying order by name. And we'll run this. And it will then give me the same, but in another order. And I can even actually say order by, and remember now that Peter was only 25 years old. So I say order by age instead. And I run it, and it will now change the order. So you can also order things by things who aren't in your selection. In this case, I order by something that isn't shown, but it still orders it the right way. Okay, we have about half an hour left of our first session. So I thought I will upload some data. I was just wondering, Emily, if the files are there. Otherwise, I have a website where they can download. If the files aren't in the resource center yet. They're in the file section of Pathable. Great, thank you. That's what I hoped they were. So if you go to Pathable and get the files there, let's see if I can go to Pathable, and let's see, there we are. You go to Pathable, that's me, and here you have files. And hopefully here we have the files that we're going to use. So let's just start by downloading the UK election 2015 file called UK election 2015. So let's download that and keep track on where you put it, sort of, so that you know where you put it. So click on the little cloud and download UK election 2015 from Pathable. And once you've done that, let's go back to DB browser. So when you've downloaded this, and for this exercise, we're actually gonna include this in the same database, even though the 4 people that I invented, or the 3 people I invented plus me, have nothing to do with this data, of course. But let's go back to database structure here for a moment. And we see here, if you click on database structure, you see here we have one table here. It's called people. That's what we created. So let's go and upload our data into DB browser. So let's do, and how we upload it is that we use file here in the menu up here. It says file. And once you see file, you can see in the middle of the menu, it says import. Sorry, I was clicking on export. It says import. And it's really, really important that you pay attention now, because if you click on database from SQL file, you will destroy your file. So please don't do that. So click on table from CSV. So pay attention here. You click on file to upload your file, and you click on import, and you choose table from a CSV file. So once you click on table, you find your file, which I have in here, and use UK election 2015. So UK election 2015, and click on open. And it says import CSV files here, hopefully, if it's working for you. So you can see that it's called UK election 2015. It asks us if column names are in the first line. Please check that, because if you look here down below, you can see it says field 1, field 2, field 3, field 4. We don't want it to do that. We wanted to say, here we have the original names of the variables of the columns. So please click on column names in the first line, and you see that they move up 1 step. So make sure that you check the box, column names in the first line. And then you can see that we have what we're called field separator. And if by some strange reason you don't have neat columns down here, columns and rows in here, it could be that this field separator is something else. It could look like that. That would be horrible. And just change it to commas there. One, because this is an international group, I just want to point out that a CSV file, which we're uploading, is what is commonly known as a comma separated values file. So it's a text, it doesn't have any fancy fonts or anything like that. It's just a text, and each column is separated by a comma separated file. If the file comes from a Nordic country, then CSV sadly means semicolon, even though it says that CSV. It's just good for you to know if you're working internationally. We do that more and more, and that's lovely, but that could cause huge problems sometimes. So one of the things that you can do if you find that your file is not working is to change the field separator from, for instance, comma to semicolon if you're getting a file from a Nordic country. If you're from a country that has other letters than A to Z, then the encoding here is great to see that you use, most likely it should be UTF-8, and it will solve your strange letters things. I know Sweden has 3 strange letters that usually gives me trouble sometimes, and UTF-8 is the thing to look at that. Yeah, exactly, the CSV. So even in France, it's like that. That's great to know. Yeah. So that is just, you just change that if you get a French CSV file and you want to upload that, you change the field separator to a semicolon instead. And once we have all this ticked, make sure once again that you have that column names ticked, and then you click OK. And all of a sudden we have two tables here. We have UK election and we have people. And I know it's strange to have them in the same box, but let's do that. Just for the sake of it, let's check that we have the proper data types, that DB browser did interpret the data in the right way. So I'm clicking on UK election and then I'm clicking on modify table. See here that it says modify table. And I want to save the database. Yes, I do. So once I click on yes, saving, I get a similar box like the box you got when we created the table. If you remember, when we created the people's table. And what we see here is that the data has correctly, the database has correctly interpreted that the PA code, which is a code, the name for the code for the constituency, as an integer. Then there's a couple of texts, and then the turnout is an integer, and the percent is real. The checkbox options in the bottom, I have no clue, Adiel, actually. You ask great questions, and the checkbox options, I have no clue. I think that PK means that it's a primary key. So you can have different kinds of, you can, for instance, if you have a database and you have a unique number for each row, then you can dedicate that column as a primary key, and that makes that it searches faster. It's a great crowd list. You can actually just find that by moving your mouse over, says Martin. Do we find that? Mine doesn't do that, but I guess. Anyway, I'm going to continue. So just check that in some of the old, if you have an older version of the program, it, for some reasons, sometimes did everything in text. Oh, great. Thank you. It did that for safety reasons, because if you have, as I said in the beginning, when we're talking about databases, that if you get a number if you get a text into a numbers column, it will throw an error and it will throw your data out. So therefore, as a precaution, in the olden days, the DB browser used to load everything in as text, and then you'd have to change the data types here. So you can still see and change that. To import the database, to import the file, you mean? Yeah, are you sure that you didn't do what I didn't tell you to do, which is sort of do file import file from a CSV file? So you shouldn't import a database, you should import a file instead. Let me close you out and let's close this out because it looks okay, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So under file, when you do import, you need to do table from a CSV file and not database. I think that might have been the problem. So please click cancel and then go back again and see if you can do import table from a CSV file instead. And hopefully that will work. Okay, we have our table. We're just going to do a few commands here before we close for today, and we'll be back tomorrow. Okay. Okay, I hope that solved your problem. So let's go back to execute SQL. And let's do the standard command that we always do, the first command I always do with all databases, which is select star from UK election 2015. There we are. So let's do that. Select star from, oh, I'm going back to my old ways. Sorry. I'm teaching you the new ways, which is one command on each row. It makes it much easier to read. From UK election. And you can see that you can actually check this and double click on it. So you don't have to write the whole name if you don't want to. So it's helping you in that way. And I'm going to do play, and we see here all the data. We see that it has a lot of columns. This is a totally different kind of data. This is the election result from the 2015 UK election. And we can also see that it has 3,971 rows. And if we look a little bit closer to the data, we can see that all this first here is the same constituency. And we have one winner. Then we have winner underscore 2015. Yes, that's Stephen Kinnock. He won the Aberfan constituency for Labour. And then we have all the other people who stood in this. Let me widen this a little bit like that. Yeah, all the other people that stood in this constituency. Helen, let's see. Peter Bush, Edward, Duncan, Helen, somebody called Captain Beanie. He was independent, and so on. All these people and all the votes that they got. From 15,000 to 134. And then we have the next constituency. And we have Guido Bev. And he is the next winner. He won with 12,000 votes, or 41.5% of the votes. And he was from the Conservative Party. So we can get a good look on what this means. That means also that we don't only have the winners, we have everybody who stood in the election. So how many winners were there? How many winners were there? Well, if we want to find that out, and we know that we have one column here called winner 2015, and it seems to have a yes every time, a Y whenever time we have a winner. We also actually have this column here, which is called rank, which has them in order. So every time there's a 1 in rank, we know that that's a winner. So let's look at that and see if we can do select. Let's do all of them to start with. From UK election 2015. And we need to put a condition here. So we use the where. And I'm just going to say, because it's shorter to write, I'm just going to say where rank equals 1. So if I go back here and I say select star from UK election 2015, and then I say where rank equals 1. Oh, sorry, it has to be, actually has to be with smaller letters. It has to be with, not with a capital R. Rank equals 1. And I run this. And here we have 650 rows. So we have 650 winners from the different constituencies. And we see that it makes more sense now because we only have 1 row for each constituency. So let's then so let's then ask, so how many members did the Labour Party get in this election? So in order to do that, we need to combine this question. These are all the winners, but they can't just be winners. They also have to be for Labour, right? So we say select star, where rank is 1 and party is Labour. So we're gonna add that on. We're gonna say and party equals, and don't forget the quotation marks, and that Labour has to be spelled capital L-A-B for this to work. And we're just gonna run this. And now we see that it was 232 rows that Labour. Oh, good. Thank you. So, and of course we can change this. So we have 332 here, and then we know that the Conservatives are big, of course, so we need to write C-O-N here. I'm just changing that. I'm gonna write it here so that you see what I'm doing. So I'm changing the query, and I'm writing C-O-N. And if we only had 2 parties, if this were the American election, and we only have 2 parties, then we could actually run these queries 2 times because we see that it's 331. But unfortunately, there aren't just 2 parties in England. There's tons of them. So we really want to find out how many votes, how many members each party got. And this is, and if you remember correctly, we had this sort of, we could do select, from, where, order by. And this is the usual sort of almost cadence that you'd use with SQL, select, from, where, order by. And we're now going to introduce, how do we do counts? How do we do a pivot table in a SQL, if I so may say so, if you remember pivot tables from Excel. So, and we're going to do this a lot in tomorrow. I just want to introduce the concept for you now, and then tomorrow we're going to work on this some more. So I'm going to say select party, comma, and then I want to count. I'm going to write count and I can count anything really, but I'm going to say candidate because I want to count how many candidates there are. I always need to do the from UK election 2015. I need to, because I need only the winners, so I need to have my condition there, right? So I'm going to do where rank equals 1, and it shouldn't be with a capital R there, so I'm going to change that. And then I have to tell SQL to lump all the people that were standing for Labour into one. It's really like when you sit there with a deck of cards, for instance, and you count the cards and say, okay, that's a heart. I'm going to put that in the heart pile. That's a spade. I'm going to put it in the spade pile. That's a club. That's another spade. That's another spade. That's another heart. So it's the same thing we're asking SQL to do. Take all the winners and then divide them into piles depending on party. And the sort of command to divide them into piles is called group by. And the simple rule to remember is that everything that is a column up here, not a command. This is like a command, like a formula in Excel. If you mind, this is a formula, it will count the counter, but everything that is a clean must be also in the group by. So we say group by party. So select party, comma, count candidate from UK election 2015, where rank is 1, we only want the winners, group by party. So I'm gonna change this a little bit. I'm gonna write a new actually. So I'm gonna say select party, comma, count. Then I'm gonna say candidate. That makes the most sense. Actually, I could say almost anything here because it would count, because it basically what it does is it counts the rows. But it's, for me, it's easier to think about that I'm actually counting the candidates. And then I'm saying from UK election 2015. I have to have my condition where rank equals 1, because I only want the winners. And then this is the new command, group by party. So what condition am I gonna use to do my piles? I'm looking at the party and then I'm putting it in different piles. So think about putting things in different piles. And once I run this, you see that I get a totally different table. I get the parties. There's a lot of parties in the UK, and I get the number. And we have 3 minutes left, and I'm just going to show you how to order this into the right pile. Somebody's ahead of me. Faki, she's ahead of me. Good job. I'm just going to use 3 minutes to do what Faki already did. Frauke, sorry, Frauke Reyes. Sorry about that. No, it's great that you're working on. That's how you learn, the trying things. That's really good. And thank you, Emily, for doing that. I might do that. I might go over a few minutes actually. So as you can see, we're using this cadence the whole time. Select from where, group by. And we're going to do that again. So we're going to do this, select party, comma, count, candidate. We need a parenthesis there. It's just like a formula in Excel. It's the same thing. From UK election 2015. And as you can see, I'm doing a lot of typing here. Normally, you would just paste, of course, copy and paste, where I want to sort of get through to you that this order is what you do the whole time. So we have the order by, and as Frauke, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, candidate, we can say order by count candidate. And as you remember, if you want to order something by the biggest to the smallest, we put these ESC. So let's try that and see if that works. So I already have the whole thing here on U2. So the only thing you need to add is order by. And we're going to do count candidate ESC. Of course, there will be times for plenty of questions. I will just going to run that, and there will be time for that. So let's run this. And you can see that here we have the result that surprised everyone in 2015. Even me, I was working in the middle of the night here when I was doing this, and nobody thought that the Conservatives would get that many votes, but they did. And mostly was that because of the second surprise of that night was that the SNP got so many votes, and they actually stole most of them from the Labour. So SNP got to be really strong in Scotland, and Conservative Party got hubris and decided that Brexit was a good idea. Sorry, that was a little personal opinion from me. I'm sorry. Did somebody had a question? I don't know how this is work. If you're gonna just write your question in the chat and I'll answer that, or if you can turn your, I think that you are all compulsory turned off. Oh, there's hopefully a question. Please post your question and I'll see if I can answer it. And as I said, we're going to continue. We're going to continue this tomorrow around noon. I hope I'm not going to be as late as that as I was. So we're going to continue with grouping, and we're also going to start looking at how to join two tables. Let's see. Yes, I actually did talk about that. So basically, very quickly, I'm just going to repeat that. I would use SQL when files were very big. When files are very big this way, so if I have several 100,000 rows or several million rows, I will definitely use SQL because I can't really put them into Excel. And to be fair to Excel, if you have, even though they say that you can have 1 million rows in Excel, if you have a complicated data set, if you do a lot of formulas, it actually Excel really struggles if it's really big. So that's one way. The other way, if I'm sharing data with a lot of people, it's safer and much made for sharing data and editing data at the same time in a relational database, and it is. And the third is the joining thing. It's so much easier to join tables when you use SQL compared to Excel. And I know that we have VLOOKUP in Excel, but this is actually works much, much better and you control it more. So I'm gonna thank you all. I hope I see most of you tomorrow. Please let me know if there's anything. There's a contact information, I think, for me, that if you have a question, just please reach out to me and do that. And thanks so much for listening to this.